Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hot Seat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners, across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Amara. Tonight, my guest is a Commissioner of Parliament. My guest is a former leader of opposition, and my guest is a member of Parliament for Nyendo Mukungwe. The Honourable Matthias Mpuuga is joining me online. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Patrick, and good evening, listeners.
It's always an honor to host you, and we are delighted that you have given us your time to be able to speak to the KFM listeners this evening. And so I'm sure they too, because we already made a promo that the Honorable Matthias Mpuuga will be on the show. First of all, how is Nyendo Mukungwe as we speak right now, and the job of commissioner and representing the people as we speak?
Well, Patrick, it's all work. It's all work's commitment. Massacre remains massacre. People are working a lot, tirelessly, to change their condition, despite the pitfalls that we find in our common space. We carry on. Parliament remains a beehive of activity and politics and politicking. Well, sometimes to levels that border on probably... what should I say? But we carry on.
So as you carry on, Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, we also understand you have come up with an idea of, with a parliamentary bill that you want to start to be able to bring some reforms in the political system of Uganda. If you may, kindly tell us what kind of reforms are you proposing?
Well, Patrick, between me and you, you're aware that our constitutional document, which is the people's consensus on how they should be governed, has faced so many challenges. First of all, it's been mutilated since promulgation in 1995, and it has suffered a lot of challenges. The amendments that so far have been made were not meant to make it any better document that really entrenches people's consensus, but to service the whims of political actors. Remember, the biggest pillar of that document, its predicate, was the removal of the term limits from the Constitution. And since then, the Constitution became simply a piece of paper, because that was the breach of the major consensus of 1995. The makers of the Constitution then were trying to make a departure from what the 1967 Constitution failed to achieve, which was transitioning Uganda from one leader to another, from one president to another. So the promise then was that as Ugandans, as a people, since the making of Uganda, that document was supposed to give us a departure from our past, riddled with failure to transition, a checkered past indeed. But here we are, since promulgation. That has not happened, meaning that we are living a lie. And any attempt, any promises to revamp it, of course I know as a lawyer that modern constitutional practice requires that a constitution is dynamic. But dynamism should be positivity in a positive way, not to stagnate the nation, not stifle freedom of expression, freedom of association, and the like. So my proposals are in part meant to address, rekindle, reignite, debate on having a functional and a durable constitutional order.
Are you, Honorable Mpuuga, appreciating the fact that the same powers that, if I may use your word, mutilated the constitution that we have are still pertaining today, because majority of members of parliament are from the NRM. The same president was presiding over when we have had all these constitutional amendments is still around. Do you understand what you're up against? Because you're up against the people who, if I may use your words, have mutilated the constitution.
Patrick, that is again the problem. That even people like you and other actors in public space have believed that we must surrender to those with power. And therefore, in surrendering, we all do nothing, observe, admire, probably live in fear, and end up doing nothing. I am from a different school of thought. I contend that human beings evolve. Those who have been responsible probably are not humble enough to say all has gone well and has gone bad, and therefore we are willing to rethink. I speak to so many political actors in the public space, civil society, religious institutions, culture institutions. This debate is not about those in power. This conversation is about the people and their consensus. Once the people of Uganda make it their point to be part of this conversation and ensure that it is enforced, I have no doubt that we can make a difference.
I don't doubt, and I really, you mean well. I suppose you mean well. You have always meant well, according to me. But I also am trying to to see the reality as it is, and know whether you're swimming against the current and you're likely to drown, because one move in a parliamentary caucus of the NRM will actually sway majority of the members of parliament to take a certain direction. If that direction is not what you want, it's game over.
Now, Patrick, unfortunately, I'm not the kind to be intimidated by numbers. I am moved by reason and logic. I am not oblivious of the fact that the forest majority will always take the day. But my eyes are also on the people of Uganda and what they want. I have been around long enough to know how we have evolved, and therefore, I cannot fail to do my job. Remember, Patrick, the primary job of a member of parliament is to make laws for the good governance of Uganda, for political stability and economic development. And because the government, the party in power, has elected to sleep on duty, all of us cannot sleep. Probably there are people out there that want to be part of this, but are fearful of being part of the investiture, and I want to offer this leadership. So I'm alive to the pitfalls, I'm alive to the challenges. So if we are so fearful, so what must we then do? Simply look on and do nothing about it?
I do not want, I am sure, Honorable Matthias, you don't want to ride on false hope. And if logic was to carry the day, logic would have carried the day long ago, because it was logical to at least keep some of those clauses in the Constitution intact. It was logical then, it is logical now, but the tyrant of numbers determined something else.
Patrick, it's also illogical to do nothing. It's only logical that something is done. And for me, I believe the more we bring these matters to the public space and become part of the public debate, it will be easier to have a clawback. Some of these amendments are meant to be, I would have come up with wide-ranging amendments, but I'm making proposals that would pose as a clawback to misrule, to give people a chance to transition, country a chance to transition. And I'm aware of all this. That's why I'm saying, and what I'm bringing is not that all that people want to see change. So if I am bringing this and people are so scared of moving with me, then I want proposals. I want else needs to be done. Should I fear logic? Should I fear I become illogical and say, well, now these guys can't listen, I do nothing? So why am I in Parliament?
Okay, so you are, Honorable Matthias, you are doing your job and I'm sure representing your people well. But also, what makes you think that this time around your colleagues in Parliament have evolved, with all respect, that this time the power of argument and power of persuasion is what is going to sway them, not necessarily, moving on like they have always done? Because I understand at one point somebody said that some members of Parliament even sleep in the chambers, and the chairman said so long as they can wake up and vote right.
Well, Patrick, I am alive to all that, but I know that the power of reason prevail is not an event. It must evolve through a process of up-close conversation, sharing ideas, disagreeing, even speaking about the matters we disagree about. So we must speak about the issues we disagree upon as leaders in the country.
So have you bothered to find out, Honorable Matthias, why some of these clauses and articles in the Constitution were expunged? What was the push factor for them to be removed? Because after understanding that, in my view, then you're on the right track of restoring them.
Patrick, you don't have to be a professor of history to understand why they were removed. And I am not emotional about what I'm doing. I'm only saying that we need to have an evolving national conversation to restore logic, to bring a conversation warm about this country and its promise on the table. If everybody is scared, somebody must sponsor it. And if we believe, and I'm speaking to all members across the aisle, and I have an appreciation of the nature of warmth members variously are expressing, and I have every reason to test this because I've been around during the attempts in the 9th Parliament, the 10th Parliament, the Toji Kwatako campaign. You see, once we go for this, Patrick, just like Toji Kwatako changed the course of our history in some way, whichever the outcome of this conversation will not leave Uganda the same in the political space.
I don't know why, Honorable, you are reluctant to tell us whether you understood why these articles were expunged from our constitution, because in my view, and perhaps even people listening, when you get to know why they were expunged, the motive behind it maybe will help you to navigate the terrain, the political terrain in 2024.
No, Patrick, you're being lazy, and I don't know why. You mean you need to have a PhD in history to know that this was politics and power and control and self-aggrandizement.
Exactly. That's what I wanted you to say yourself. Power, politics, and control. Power, politics, and control still rule supreme today.
I know for a fact that those who actually wanted that to happen have also seen the pitfalls of their desire to hold on to it. We must make it improbable. We must make it difficult for them to still have that desire. It's my job. It's your job. The job of every citizen, civic responsibility, to make that impossible, but not to clearly look on and be fearful. That appetite must implode in their faces. But for the implosion to happen, we must have a conversation that tells it all in their face to say, we want this back. I cannot simply look on and lament about the impossibility. I can only take them on. It's a civil way of dealing with their appetite.
If in this idea, in this proposition, the majority of members of parliament look at you as a political rival or enemy who is bringing a legislation that can easily legislate them out of power, I can assure you, you won't have allies.
Which one?
If the proposition you are bringing is looked at as something that can threaten, for example, the NRM juggernaut, then you will not have allies from them. And if you don't have allies from the majority of members of parliament, then your proposition is dead on arrival.
Well, Patrick, you probably need time to understand the nature, the scope, the breadth and length of these propositions. Invariably, members of parliament must, as a matter of policy, discuss issues that threaten their very existence, because then failure of debate of these issues cannot guarantee their survival either. So I do not see why anybody would, in their wisdom and understanding, say that they fear debate of a matter because then they are legislating themselves out of power. I contend that what is important for the legislators is to be part of a conversation that gives this country a promise and hope that things can be better, whether you are in and out of parliament. The attrition rate of members of parliament is 85%. So has a guarantee that they'll survive regardless of amendments or reforms anyway. So the whole idea is that I am making a plethora of proposals. That's why I need a conversation, because these are proposals that will come through a bill. Then, if they're given a space in a committee of parliament, and then consultation with the public, then what doesn't work will be thrown out. What they believe is workable and probable, then will be given a space. That's the essence of leadership.
Okay, Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, hold on to your point because we're going to take a break. When we come back, we would want to know the specifics of the constitutional reforms you want to be brought. We'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight, joining me online, is the Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, who's Commissioner of Parliament and Member of Parliament representing Nyendo Mukongwe. And you have propositions, or you want to bring the constitutional reforms. If to be fair, for the people listening to us, it's better to go through maybe one by one. I've seen about 6 items that you talk about, and the electoral reforms. And number one is restore and entrench article on presidential term limits. Why do you want the presidential term limits to be restored?
Well, Patrick, the term limits in Parliament at the making of the 1950 Constitution, like I said earlier in my preamble, this was a key ingredient of the consensus of the people of Uganda, and because it was emphasized that there will never be a person to rule Uganda for life, and therefore this was the major pillar of that constitution. And when it was removed, it almost was communicating a new consensus for Uganda, which was never the spirit of that constitution. For example, it never was envisaged that a single individual would rule Uganda and at some stage would have appointed every justice of the court of record. And therefore, they cannot challenge that person in a court, say in a presidential election. It now happens that every single appointment there is in Uganda has been done by a single person. The spirit was that even if you are too terrible, you are too bad, you can only rule us for 2 terms, and therefore you go. And that assured the nation that a country will transition, power will change, there will never be a cabal appropriating power unto themselves, that people will share the proceeds, the benefits of being a part of this great nation. The removal of the term limits made that impossible, improbable, and therefore killed the spirit of that constitution. We need to restore hope in the promise of Uganda. And restoring term limits will give this country a probability. And I think it's even good for General Museveni and his aspirations now, that he gives an indication of the fact that he's not the problem in as far as the Ugandan question that's riddled with the failure transition, power in a few hands, that question is finally answered by the restoration of this hope. By restoring term limits, I want to have the nation debate, parliament debate, on the hope of this promise that was the part of the making of the 1950 Constitution. This was the part of the basic structure of the 1950 Constitution. Once it was removed, the basic structure collapsed, and therefore the consensus was shortchanged, Patrick. We want to restore it.
So now, if you have said that the status quo gives the current president a lot of power, and for sure, I can imagine most politicians, they are always preoccupied with retaining power. Why would they entertain a proposition from Honorable Mpuuga that is going to challenge that kind of power, and yet they want to retain it, or threaten that power?
You know, the problem with people in the public space is believing that the conversation about power is about politicians alone. I have been around long enough across Africa to know that power can be wrestled, power can be negotiated through legislation, power can be, we can find ways of doing it as long as we have a civil way. Then legislation is one way of clawing back on absolute power. And I know that even those who have it, along the way, I'm sure they are human beings, and therefore they can rethink their situation and condition now and after, to rethink their own model and say, I think we can do better. We want to put to test their ability to rethink the past and think about the present, where we are and how we are struggling to transition by trying to crawl back on the power in this article.
Have you already had some maybe conversation with the members of Parliament across the aisle, and they are showing you that somehow they are, on this occasion, they are going to listen and they are up for debate on this matter? Because what I have realized over time is that some cases, even they don't entertain debate. It is just the caucus that rubber stamps whatever an individual decides, and that's it. Do you have a feeling, Honorable Mpuuga, that this time they are ready to debate with you on this issue?
Patrick, I work with these members of Parliament. Parliament is my workplace. Parliament is my employer. These members of Parliament are colleagues. We work in the same space. And we purport to be working for the same people. Probably it's the test to these members whether they feel Uganda at heart. And therefore, given an opportunity, they can give Uganda a fresh beginning. I cannot assure you and listeners that I can guarantee that they work with me. But it's better that we put them to test and that the people of Uganda join me in pushing them to rethink their politics and life after politics. This is my call.
Okay, the other issue on the electoral reforms you propose is to introduce a second tier of parliament headed by Deputy President, who will also be on the ballot paper as President, at the upper house of about 39 MPs from original 39 districts. What do you want to achieve with this reform?
Well, apparently this is preceded by the proposal to cut down on the size of parliament, to give each district 2 members of parliament. And that will culminate into 146 times 2, plus the 10 from the 10 cities. That is cutting the current parliament by over 200 MPs. The result of that will be that we shall cut back on public expenditure, on political activity, politicians, and the attendant issues to them. Introducing, you see, I listened to General Museveni some time back saying that it's not proper to reduce the size of parliament, and his reasoning was that because some of the constituencies are selected to enhance national cohesion. The second tier, the upper house that I'm proposing, from the 39 original districts, a priori the making of the 95 Constitution, actually represent Uganda so well. They will take care of major issues that relate to national unity and cohesion, because in them, when you look at them up, that's the true boundaries of Uganda representing. Everybody can see themselves in those districts. They'll take care of key government or presidential appointments, vet them, and make sure they represent Uganda. They'll, together with the parliament, the lower house, concur the budget to make sure that the budget represents Uganda, not a small group or a region or individuals, plus other duties I intend to propose for this house. And I want a deputy president to be on the ballot with the president. And in my proposal, the two must not come from the same region as part of enhancing national cohesion. I have wide-ranging proposals on how, for example, the president will be declared on the percentages. I'm proposing that the president elected should be able to obtain 25% of the vote from each region of Uganda, 30 of which there will be a rerun.
So now, reducing the size of parliament, do you understand the mindset of the NRM government of today is actually about increasing? You can see now, since you are a legislator, an Ambole size of parliament or a new chamber is being built. Actually, that is the mindset. In other words, increases where they stand. That's why they are even building a bigger one, almost a football size of parliament in the heart of the city. That is the kind of people you're dealing with.
Well, Patrick, the mistake you can make as a public influencer is to think about this country in the mirror of the NRM. The NRM is not a permanent cog in this country. It will serve its purpose and go. But in the meantime, it's my duty to legislate beyond the life of NRM. And that's what I'm trying to do. I am aware that, for example, that the current parliament was meant for less than 100 members of parliament, 120. It now houses 550. There was every reason to build a new chamber. Whether it's a football pitch, I understand it's a space meant to be high-tech and therefore requires more space than the current. So I don't want to really be occupied by sand and mortar, but the reason behind and purpose of legislation and why we have leaders in this country.
Yeah, but brick and mortar indicates the mindset of the NRM government that is in control right now, because that is why they're expanding. After all, as of now, there are other cities that are supposed to come on board, including other municipalities are waiting, which means that the parliament that we have now, according to the NRM government, it is supposed to increase by maybe 20 more legislators if cities are approved and more municipalities are approved. And they're going to be approved by you, the Parliament.
That's why I don't want to discuss form, Patrick. I would rather go to the substance. If those who are going to work with me see form in my proposals, that can never be my problem. At least I would have explained to the people of Uganda what needs to be done. The question that you normally raise to politicians, host, and I follow you closely, you might ask them what is the solution. I am advancing my solutions, and I want someone to tell me that the solution is a big chamber. So we cannot sit as leaders and watch on as things go when we cannot make proposals. What happens, for example, if today the NRM collapses, that should do? Should we simply say we wait until the NRM collapses and then we propose a way forward for Uganda? I want the NRM to be part. I have no doubt that the NRM must be part of the conversation to change the trajectory of our politics and to change the future of Uganda. You can never wish away their participation, but I want their participation to be positive. They have a chance to prove that actually they think well, to prove that actually they have every reason to change the past. Probably they had reason to believe that they are more to work. Now we know that the cost of public expenditure is weighing down on the people of Uganda.
I wonder why, Honorable Mpuuga, you don't see the rationale of having in the House people with disabilities as an interest group, the youth, and probably the military, considering our past. Why do you think this is not necessary?
Patrick, I'm sure, apart from the anecdotes and the outlines they have seen on my social media handles, you have not read the entirety of my document, and I cannot blame you because I haven't shared its entirety. But one of the key proposals I am making, for example, I am proposing that the women members of Parliament from the 146 district should be voted by proportional representation, meaning that a party will obtain the number commensurate with the percentage obtained from the national vote. So every small party will have an occasion to have a woman MP. Patrick, that's part of enhancing national cohesion, and it's one way of legislating power sharing and, do away with winner takes all that we are into, the first past the post. Secondly, I have a proposal for a particular number of MPs. My proposal is about 50 MPs on top of the 146 from the districts and 146 for the women. 50 shared across all parties in Parliament. And from those 50, a party will be empowered from among them. Select the youth, the disabled. And if you're a party that is pro-workers, then choose the workers from there. That will be your space.
All right.
But what we do not want is to legislate. We can empower a party to say that as much as feasible, one from your select 50 should be a person with disability. That's what we want to legislate.
All right, Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, hold on to your point. When we come back, we would want to know, you also propose prisoners and Ugandans in diaspora to vote, but I also want to put it to you that there are other people who have, been talking about electoral constitutional reforms, including the Honorable Lumo, including the Minister for Constitutional Affairs and Justice. We have Honorable Lulume and many others. And it looks like some of these ideas and propositions have not seen light of day. Will you as do? We'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight, joining me online, is Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, Member of Parliament representing Nyendo Mukungwe, and also Commissioner of Parliament. He is proposing constitutional reforms, and he's given us some areas that you want reforms. I understand, Honorable, that one of the reforms will include for prisoners and Ugandans in diaspora to vote. And going to have quite a big number of Ugandans in diaspora. If I may also know, Ugandan diaspora seem to have shown their political inclination towards the opposition, and they are quite very busy online, and I'm told we almost have like 1 million Ugandans outside. If we have failed to organize elections for people to vote in their polling stations, and we have had malpractices in our polling stations. How, again, can we have a smooth electoral process for the Ugandans who are living, let's say, in Mongolia, in Bahrain, in Saudi, in Dubai? How will it be done?
Well, Patrick, what you have described as our checkered past deter us from bringing on board other Ugandans in being part of the civic, participation in these elections. My proposal is that Uganda has, for example, I think over 45 embassies, high commissions, and consulates, and these will be polling centers. You're aware, for example, that the Electoral Commissions Act is supposed to be amended in 2021. High Court decreed that it was unconstitutional to deter Ugandans in diaspora and prisoners from voting. And therefore, one of the reforms is to amend the Electoral Commissions Act so that there is provision for them, for this commission to appoint polling officers and polling commissioners at the embassies and high commissions, as well as having the same in prisons. Well, as somebody is a prisoner, prison does not take away the entirety of one's civic rights. And in my proposals, only those committed to death would not vote, because a death conviction is like you are decommissioned. It's a decommissioning of sorts, and therefore those could stay away from an election. But the rest, the High Court judge in Karali, Stephen versus Attorney General, and the Electoral Commission decreed that it was unconstitutional, and therefore all that was required was to amend the EC Act and make provision on how these two categories of Ugandans will vote. Uganda has over 2 million people above 18 in diaspora capable of voting, and therefore their right to vote have been violated since we began preparing elections under the current constitutional framework. And therefore, we cannot continue with this violation because elections are fiddled with. It's our duty, it's our job at every electoral cycle to ensure that voting processes improve and that the gaps that are identified clearly are closed, and probably the participation of the diaspora will improve some of these.
So now, when you observe, been observing, activities among our fellow Ugandans in diaspora, and it appears most of the people I've seen expressing themselves, and they have a right to express themselves. I've seen it in Ontario and Montreal, I've seen it in New York, in Pretoria, in South Africa, and Dubai. Most of them are inclined towards the voice of the opposition. And you're talking about 2 million Ugandans abroad. And if majority of them are inclined towards the opposition, you think here in Uganda you are going to have allies who will give them a voice to express themselves, knowing that that voice is not helpful to the status quo?
Well, Patrick, I agree with those sentiments. Unfortunately, I find them lazy and flimsy. My people, my friends in the West, and they are the right, have seen the last election been voting General Museveni, 80%. In some districts, 100%. Should we freeze the elections in those constituencies, in those districts? But that's said and done. Nobody has conducted a census of Ugandans or even carried out a kind of opinion poll of their inclination. Ugandans in diaspora are various. I've been with so many Ugandans. I've traveled and met so many of them. They are various, and I respect that. We have every reason. These are people who remit more money to our coffers than Kofi contributes every financial year. If you have them contribute to this economy that much, there must be a push, a legitimate push from within and without to have them participate in that civic duty. And therefore, the fear of their inclination can only be a reason of actually the lazy, probably the wicked, because you can never advance that as a reason among serious people.
I have also seen one of the reforms we want is declaration of presidential results for districts, as is done for MPs before transmission of results to National Center. For the people listening to you tonight, specifically, what do you want to cure here? What problem is this?
Well, Patrick, in the current legislation, in the Presidential Elections Act, Cap 174, especially in Part 7, Sections 50 to 60, the procedure for counting votes, transmission of results, and announcement of results is provided for. But the process of transmitting election results starts at the polling station and requires the presiding officer, upon declaration of results, to fill declaration forms, deliver results to the sub-county headquarters or division headquarters, and then the designated officer at the district. That is so elaborate, and it's prone to a lot of fiddling. The process I'm describing is cumbersome and leads to delays in receiving, tallying, and collecting of results. And that over the last couple of elections, the tally delays. The process also exposes the results to manipulation, like we know, and consequently it averts the will of the people. So the remedy I'm trying to propose is requiring the results arising from presidential elections to be counted at a polling station and transmitted directly to the commission, and therefore be eliminating the requirement of transmitting and tallying the results by the returning officer. You know, what we're trying to do, Patrick, is while that is being done at the polling station, each polling station will be allocated or be given a unique identifier number, and the identifier number allocated to each polling station under that section I'm going to put in shall be published in the Gazette. So once you transmit results with an identifier number, you can never confuse one polling station with another. And in that amendment, a district returning officer should be able to take care of entirely the declaration of these results from the polling station in finality. You not go to Toro and then they'll tell you, you see, we announced in Kamara's MP for Porto Municipality, but for the president, you wait. No, we must know the winner of the presidency in Porto Municipality or city, for that matter. So that we're trying to really streamline our elections to avoid fiddling and intermeddling and the shortchanging of the will of the people along the way.
All right. Now, we have been to this road before. Some people have attempted before. Actually, if you remember, the Supreme Court had recommendations who are calling for more or less the same electoral reforms and constitutional reforms. I know also the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs is also having mooted an idea of constitutional reforms. I know the Honorable Nwagabar has also talked of constitutional and electoral reforms. I know of Honorable Lumu, who is talking about reforms in the administration of Parliament. I know your colleague, the Honorable Dr. Lulume, who's talking about reforms for transition. Quite a proposition idea. Some of them are similar to what you're talking about. For those who are who think like you, why don't you maybe sit together and have just one big proposition of reforms instead of everybody bringing theirs? Have you spoken to them, especially people who sit with you on the side of the aisle?
Patrick, I am in close communication with these colleagues. For example, the proposals by Dr. Lulume are transitional propositions, and in my wide-ranging constitutional reform, I am proposing a transitional process from one president to another. You know, what we have here right now, what appears to be the transition, envisage that the sitting president will be the elected president. And we have never had occasion to debate a situation where the incumbent is defeated. And see, that's why and when it comes to that, some of these consequential amendments to the Constitution, for example, the Dr. Lume Baiga proposals will be a bill of its own for an act, a presidential transitional act. And I'll support him. We have discussed that. Honorable Lumu has proposals to amend the Constitution, also to amend the Administration of Parliament Act. We have discussed, and I think he's going to zero on amending the Administration of Parliament Act and leave those that require amending the Constitution. I do not know what the Honorable Mao has. He's not in my space. He has a duty, public duty, to bring these proposals. And I cannot wait for him because I never signed him anything.
All right.
I can only work with his colleagues that are available for this conversation, and we're in touch.
To be fair to our listeners also, I just want to briefly look into another issue before we conclude. There's a group, Honorable Mpuuga, it is calling itself the DP Bloc. They are moving around, rallying masses to back you for presidency come 2026. These include the Honorable Michael Mabike, Samuel Mukaku, and is this your strategy as well?
Well, Patrick, I think we're getting mixed up with these issues. I am a political actor, and that's not a rumor that I'm a political actor, and an active one at that, and an able one at that. I heard that message from my colleagues. First of all, they did not consult with me, but they're people I know so well. We've been in the same space for generations of time. I have advised them thus, that whereas they have made that proposal, it's not a preoccupation for me, because I know for a fact that the opposition in Uganda needs to kindly sit under a big tent and have a conversation over possibilities. And from that conversation, the opposition should go ahead and choose from amongst their rank and file a competent one man or woman that represent these views, probably.
So are you suggesting that these people, the Honorable Mike Mabike and Samuel Mukaku, do not have your support, are not working with you behind them? This is entirely their own proposition.
They are making their proposition, and they have a right to make a proposition, sir.
So let me also try to bring to your attention what I read in the Sunday Monitor. And because the NUP leader, the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, has told a section of the media that he told us Sunday Monitor that we run again in 2026. But he says the government is using you, the former NUP vice president and former leader of opposition, to register People Power as a political party. He says that the government is using you, that somehow you're being manipulated, and whatever you're done, it seems to be somebody has put you on a joystick of sorts.
First of all, I was shocked, but not surprised. I was only dismayed by the fact that the Daily Monitor, its issue sometime 2 months back, ran a whole text of parties registered and their sponsors. And there was People Power something, front, and the people behind it. I don't know why Mr. Chagulanyi is preoccupied with the name of Matthias Mpuuga. Probably he misses me so much. But I want to assure him that there's no amount of blackmail against me that is going to change what I am. And I pity him. Probably it confirms the fact, what I hear, that lately he's a loner. The brain space at NUP has fizzled, and what is there is noise. If he had consulted his colleagues who have told him, please, we actually know the sponsor of PPF, because he was one of them. He was an assistant to their Secretary General. So I don't know why Mr. Chagulanyi, for lack of what to do and say. In fact, I thought that statement was mental. So, but I forgive him.
No, well, but let's face it. You have represented in the parliament for quite some time. You are a commissioner of parliament. You have been a leader of opposition. You're Ugandan with national repute. Wouldn't you naturally be preparing yourself to take your political, journey a notch higher, the presidency?
Do I lack capacity to move and register a party? Does anybody have to use me? If I may ask, who used him to register NUP? I think if you host a leader of Honorable Chagulanyi's stature, there should be put strict proof. Otherwise, rumor mongering does not augur well with position of leadership. I want to encourage Mr. Chagulanyi to stick to building NUP. He talks about it as a party that has values. He's declared himself a candidate. I don't know which forum of the party actually elected him to be candidate. When you have NRM with himself a solo candidate, So you have a Kyagulanyi solo candidate with a party that has no constitution in space. You call an MP, a leader in NUP, and ask them to share with you a party constitution. These are the issues over which I was challenging them when I was part of them actively. And they failed to produce one. I told them to make a constitution. They fiddled with the kind of constitution. So I think he has no reason to speak about morality and values. He has no capacity to speak about values with his political method. How do you declare yourself a candidate without a party organ sitting declaring one? Are you intimidating others? Are you trying to suggest that you're a solo candidate over the party? Are you circumventing party processes?
Are you aware that you are in Parliament on a NUP ticket? And before you say all these things, with the blessings of NUP, you are able to go to Parliament. And I'm sure the listeners are wondering, come 2026, will you be seeking another NUP card to run in that, maybe for the people of Nyendo Mukungo to hire you again?
Patrick, you seem to suggest that NUP is an individual. That I'm in Parliament because of an individual was magnanimous. I was part of NUP building processes. I made NUP what it is. I owe NUP, NUP owes me. There was no magnanimity. It was doing common good. And therefore, I have every reason to question the wisdom, the actions, the misadventures of anybody in NUP's space.
All right.
And nobody can scare me from saying so and questioning their wisdom.
All right. Honorable Matthias, very, very briefly, your parting shot.
Well, Patrick, I would like to invite you and all and sundry, all citizens in the public space, media, civil society, to be part of the conversation about reforms, about these reforms. These conversations will help national unity. A warm conversation about the possibilities, the impossibilities, the disagreements, the checkered past of Uganda is what we need.
All right.
Therefore, we can be able to move the country to a new and fresh state.
Commissioner of Parliament and Member of Parliament representing Nyendo Mukungo, former leader of opposition, Matthias Mpuuga. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hot Seat. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same station. Good night and God bless Uganda.